Today's plant portrait is Madeira Vine, Anredera cordifolia, a twining evergreen climber with thick, heart-shaped leaves that look almost polished when the light hits them. In this video, I'll show you Madeira Vine's beauty and its bad habits. We'll look at the flowers, the fast growth, the tubers that help it spread, and the simple container routine that keeps it under control, plus how we cook the leaves. Welcome to With the Garden. Here in Los Angeles, in a cozy yard, I'm learning and sharing as I go. I hope you'll grow along with me. Let's begin. If a friend hands you a little seedling and says the leaves are edible and the plant is hard to kill, it sounds like a gift from the gardening gods. And it is. It is also potentially a practical joke. That was how Madeira Vine entered our garden. A small digging from a friend's yard, offered with total confidence. Since then, it has been a sometimes flamboyant and sometimes quiet presence here in Los Angeles County. And I've learned that this vine can be both beautiful and a little too talented at surviving. Our first months with it were pure romance. We let it grow freely and trained it around a metal structure near our desk area, back when that spot was still waiting to become the star jasmine gate you see now. The Madeira Vine turned that frame into a living green doorway, a soft wall of heart leaves that made the whole corner feel cooler, calmer, and somehow more welcoming. Then it flowered. Long, dangling sprays of tiny and delicate white blooms appeared like a fringe of lace against the glossy green, and the buds didn't all open at once. Each cluster unfurled gradually from tip to base, so the vine stayed in bloom in gentle waves. A few days later, the little starry flowers loosened and drifted down like soft confetti, leaving fresh buds behind to keep the curtain going. At its best, it looked like it belonged in a garden magazine. And yes, we once used it as the backdrop for our New Year holiday card, because it was doing that much. Then we met the other side of its personality. Madeira Vine doesn't just climb, it expands. It twines and reaches, and once it finds a surface, it treats that surface like an invitation. The tendrils are not decorative, they are purposeful. They thread themselves into gaps, hook around supports, and keep going until the vine has turned your original idea into its own larger plan. And if you ignore it for a while, it doesn't sulk, it multiplies. What look like little fruits are often aerial tubers, sometimes called bulbils, small knobby storage nodules that form along the stems, drop to the ground, and start new plants with impressive confidence. In many places, the plant doesn't rely on seeds or true fruit much at all. It spreads mainly by those aerial tubers and underground tubers. In our yard, once we noticed those drop and sprout surprises, the vine's hard to kill reputation suddenly felt very literal. So we did what many gardeners eventually do with a plant like this. We renegotiated the relationship. We moved it away from a prominent structure and put it in a less central corner, partly shaded. It still grew very well. In shade, the leaves became thicker, larger, and noticeably more tender, which is actually wonderful if you're growing it as a leafy green. But it also kept climbing, covering whatever it could reach, and any tubers that fell became volunteers. At that point, we made the decision that gave us the best balance. We put it in a container. If you want to grow Madeira Vine at home without it quietly taking over your calendar, I genuinely think a container is the most realistic way, especially in a dense garden where every square foot already has a job. Use a pot large enough that it doesn't dry out instantly. Fill it with well-draining soil. Give it something sturdy to climb, and prune it like you mean it. And then prune it again. The best maintenance habit is removing any aerial tubers before they drop, because each one is basically a tiny backup plan. Also, Be careful with disposal. Don't toss cuttings or tubers into a casual compost pile or a back corner, because small pieces can resprout. In our Los Angeles rhythm, the vine feels evergreen most of the year, with surges of growth when warmth returns. In a sunny spot, it looks lush and glossy, but the scorched midday sun during extreme heat can make the leaves wilt and burn, as if the plant is briefly reconsidering its life choices. Partial shade, especially afternoon shade, keeps it looking fresher and makes the leaves nicer at the table. We've also noticed something simple. The more consistent the water, the more tender the growth. Not soggy, not flooded, just steady, like most leafy greens prefer. And yes, we eat it, though not as often as the vine seems to want us to. The plant grows so fast and so lush that we simply can't keep up with harvesting. A dozen big leaves is enough for a small dish, sautéed with garlic, mixed with other greens, or cooked with eggs when you want something quick and comforting. Some people eat the young leaves and stems raw as well, but I tend to like it cooked because the leaves have that thick, slightly mucilaginous texture that reminds you it's a relative of Malabar spinach. At farmers' markets, you may see tender shoots sold under names like wine spinach or creeping spinach, names that tell you exactly how people use it, like a spinach substitute, but perennial and less needy once established. Now, a necessary bit of context, because this is where the story gets bigger than one backyard. Madeira vine is native to South America and was carried around the world largely as an ornamental, because it really is beautiful. But in mild climates, it can become a serious invasive pest, climbing high into trees and smothering what it grows over with sheer weight and vigor. When I saw posts from gardeners describing it as a weed that can overwhelm trees, even tall trees, I understood immediately. It's not a bad plant. It's just a plant with a lot of ambition. In our garden, we can enjoy it precisely because we keep it contained. Nutritionally, Madeira vine is treated like many leafy greens, valued for vitamins, minerals, and antioxidant compounds, with research attention often focusing on phenolics and antioxidant activity in the leaves. You will also find it discussed under the name Binahong in parts of Southeast Asia, where the leaves are used traditionally and studied for bioactive compounds. In Chinese, it's often called
落葵属
and also known by regional names Tengsanqi or Chuanqi, and it's sometimes mentioned in folk medicinal contexts for things like swelling or bruising. This is where I want to be very clear and practical. Common names can be dangerously messy. Some names like Tusanqi are used for other plants as well, including ones associated with toxicity and serious harm, so this is not a place for casual self-medication. Enjoy it as a food if you've correctly identified it and it agrees with you, but don't treat a vine in your yard like a substitute pharmacy. As for pests and diseases, our Madeira vine has been remarkably unbothered. No dramatic infections, no obvious chronic issues, just vigorous growth that basically requires us to be the main pest control. If you do see problems, they tend to be the usual sapsuckers on tender growth, like aphids or spider mites, which are more annoying than catastrophic if you catch them early and rinse them off, or use a gentle soap spray. These days, we're training our potted vine into a small green wall, just for the fun of it. And I think that's the right role for Madeira vine in a home garden, a contained source of beauty and edible leaves, a plant you can admire up close, without giving it the opportunity to audition for the role of garden overlord. If you've grown Madeira vine, did you fall for the flowers first, or the promise of an easy perennial vegetable? And what's your best method for keeping enthusiastic plants contained? Pruning, pots, or a very firm talk in the morning? Thank you for watching. If this was helpful or inspiring, please give it a like, share, subscribe, and tell me what you're growing in the comments. See you next time in the garden.